This video goes over the full armature of the Heartflame Diki Spirit. I start with a square of chicken wire, and I count out 5 prongs on the top. This is going to be where the shoulders and neck are. And then I cut down the sides. Until I have a smaller section here that can fold over itself. I connect the twisted wires on each side, and then I twist the empty prongs around the armature. I make sure that all of the pokey parts are pointed inward so they don't poke me later. These will be the legs, and because they're uneven, I'm going to have to even out one side. One side has 4 prongs and the other side has 3. So I take off this outer wire, and then I want to straighten this one so it matches the other one on the other side. I re-wrap it onto the armature. And that should be about matching. Now I return to the top where the 5 prongs are. I fold one around the next prong. And then I repeat until it forms a sort of star shape. And then I leave the last prong standing and unwrapped because this is where I'm going to put my ball and socket armature later. I bend the middle prong where the chest is going to be down, and then the rest I curve inward until the top of the neck is kind of concave. This will give the neck a better range of movement when I put on the plastic ball and socket armature. Next, I follow the line straight down the middle of the back, and I cut out the tail wires. Each side of this chicken wire is going to be a leg, and then the middle here is the tail. I remove any excess wires, and then I go on to the legs. I pull them out, and then I take the furthest prong out, and I connect it to the base of the tail. I wrap it around the tail until it's connected to the armature, and then I repeat on the other side. You can see here I feed it into the wire so it stays in place. You can see the legs kind of forming now. I'm going to cut off the excess at the bottom. I stretch the body kind of into shape at this point because I'm trying to sculpt it as I go. And then I take these middle prongs and I wind them together so the legs connect in the crotch area. I try to pull these legs up because I want them to be angled high like a Diki spirit. And then I connect all these empty prongs into the other side of the leg. I uncoil any of the excess wires at the base here. And I'm not sure how I'm going to fit those into the armature yet because I haven't gotten my feet sculpted. So I'm going to leave those empty because I'm not sure which ones I'll use. Then I repeat this process on the other side. And then I straighten these wires so whenever I use them later, they'll be easier to work with. I use the flat part of the needle nose pliers to straighten them. So here's that chicken wire base. And I unwind the tail completely and straighten all the excess wires to use later. Now I can use those loose wires to connect the ball and socket armature as the tail. I take one side and wrap it around a couple times, and then I go around on the other side until it's secure. And then I wrap those wires back into the armature so the tail stays in place. Now I'm going to start sculpting my paws. I use a mixture of cosclay and super sculpey, and I roll it until it's nice and soft. Then I roll out a coil, and I sculpt it into a sort of golf club shape. I repeat this process, and then I combine these two to create the two middle toes of the paw. I roll out another smaller one and connect it to the side, and I do the same on the other side. You can see the paw forming now. For the center, I roll out a coil and I sculpt a little triangle piece at the base. That's going to be the middle paw pad. I press it into the foot, and then I squeeze all the coils together and I smooth out the seams. I keep smoothing until it's getting thinner and sleeker into the shape I want. I sculpt little details with my ball stylus, and I fix some of the edges of the paw with more clay. I cut off the excess, and then I smooth everything out with alcohol later. I repeat the process on the other paw until I have two identical Diki paws. Before I bake them, I want to add a copper wire in the center so they can be connected to the armature. I measure the length I want, fold that wire in half, and then add a third wire the same length in between the two. I wrap the two wires around the loose wire and grab hold of them with my pliers. Then I loosely twist them until it's a smooth, even twist. I don't want to twist it too tight or else that'll weaken the wires. I bend it up to mimic the shape of the foot, and then I press the wire into the paw. You can see it's kind of ruined all that smooth sculpting, but I can go in later and smooth it out until it's the exact shape I want. And then I score the edges. That's where the fur is going to attach later. Now I have two paws ready to bake. Once they're baked, I sand them so they don't have any lumps. Now I can connect my feet. I place the copper wires inside of the thigh until I find the place I want the foot to be. Then I start wrapping each wire around a different piece of chicken wire. Actually, this method ended up not working for me later. I use the same method that I connect the arms with, but that only works if they aren't really supporting a bunch of weight, and these were. So one of the wires was getting all of the weight and the other wires weren't getting any. So I ended up having to attach all of the wires in the same direction so they worked as a unit and supported the whole structure together, and it wasn't just on one wire. Next, I take more of my armature and I push it into that top star piece that we bent earlier on the chest area. And I fold that one prong in and secure it. Not shown here is me using Instamorph to mold around the plastic ball and socket armature and secure it to the wire. This is it hardened, but it's clear whenever it's hot, and I did that earlier in the kitchen. I previously cast some other pieces of the Diki spirit in resin. I only needed to sculpt the paws this time because I wanted new ones. This is an arm piece. I need to be able to feed an elastic band through the middle of it, so I start drilling a hole down the center. I go from one side to the other until I meet in the middle. I drill a hole through the ears of the head. That's where another elastic band is going to go. And then I take my ears and I draw a cross section on the bottom ball part of the ear. I drill a hole through that center line of the cross section. And then I Dremel saw the crosses into the ear. This is where the elastic gets fed through, and this is how the ears pose. For the hands, the cast had a lot of bubbles. I had to use epoxy clay to fix. The Dremel tool I'm using here is called a bead reamer, and I'm using that to define the cut in the wrist of this hand. I don't want to go all the way through because I want to leave like a stick in the middle. It acts like a pin to keep the elastic in place when it's fed through. Here's all the resin Dremeled pieces finished. In between this I painted them, but I will go over the painting of these pieces in a different video. To connect my hands with the arm, I feed some elastic through the arm and then through that little divot in the hand. And then back through the arm. This is not the official way you're supposed to make a ball jointed hand and wrist. These are all methods that I've developed myself, and they have their flaws, and the paint actually does scrape off of the hand, but I kind of rough it around until I get as much scraped off as it's going to get scraped off, and then I fill it in with more paint or Sharpie that will stay and it's not going to get scraped off. Next, I take a wire. This is going to be for the rest of the arm, and I do the same thing I did on the foot. I create one U shape and then a stray wire in between them, and then I twist them. I tie a knot in the elastic so it doesn't fall through the hand and get it loose. And then I push the wire into the hole of the arm, and I make sure that it didn't loosen any of the elastic. I make sure to bend it at a U shape. If I bend it too hard of an angle, then it will weaken the wire over time. I actually didn't glue these in or anything. They stay pretty well on their own. And then I attach them to the armature. For the arms, it's actually very useful to put every prong of the copper in a different direction because the arm doesn't hold any weight and it moves in every direction. You want to make sure that it's strong if it goes left, right, up, and down. And there's the final wire armature. I make sure that the ears fit in and look nice on the head, but those are going to go in later. I don't attach them yet. Here I'm putting the heart, which is wrapped in a piece of rabbit felt, into the armature. And then I wrap the excess elastic around the rest of the arm and tie it to the base. I don't know why. I could probably just cut it off, but I just feel like I want excess in there. After the heart's in, I put a bunch of different rocks in the base of the Room Guardian to weigh it down. And then I start with my foil. I take like a 3 to 4 inch strip and I crumple it up. I feed it through the chicken wire where the rocks are, and I press it down around the rocks so they stay in place. I make sure to press as hard as I can to fill all the divots. I repeat this process many times until I get the shape I want, but I make sure not to do too many or else it'll bulk out and it'll be too fat whenever I put fur on it. Whenever I wrap my foil, I don't wrap it flat. I like to keep it crumpled, and that keeps it in place and fills out all the deep holes better than it would if it was just flat. If there are any hard to get divots, I'll fill them in later with hot glue and a little piece of foil. I work my way all the way up the body, doing a ton of layers. You do not see all the layers I'm putting on here. I put so many layers that are not pictured. I want to make sure that I can squeeze the Room Guardian with all my might and it won't collapse. The foil is strong enough to do that, if you layer enough of them on. And I prefer to keep the body slimmer than thicker because the fur adds a lot more bulk. Once that's done, I can add the foil to the arms. And I don't want to add any foil at the parts where the arm bends. So I keep it free at the shoulder and the elbow. I just want a kind of carrot-like shape for the bicep. To help squeeze it down, I'll use pliers, so it's nice and dense. And you can see that I've left that elbow and the shoulder free of foil. I'm really sorry, but I don't actually have any footage of the finished armature here. That's just the straight armature. So here's just some footage from other videos I took. And finally, some footage of a different Diki spirit where you can see the full armature. I'm really sorry I didn't get any footage here. I did not realize that happened. But you can kind of get an idea through all these other clips of what it looks like. It's pretty self-explanatory.